Huawei founder says Chinese giant doesn't need the U.S. You hear that, Will? They're fine without them. They don't need them. They're doing business still. So it goes by the name Ren Zhengfei. Of course, we've talked about him many times. He has a unique way of speaking and sending messages both to the U.S. as well as Donald Trump himself. Now, in the beginning, when the trade conversation kicked off, or the lack of conversations, is another way to put it, he had that interesting interview referring to Huawei as a plane that needed repairs. I loved that thing. He's like, we need many parts. We need some repairs. We'll fix it up. But he's kind of changed his tune a little bit as time has progressed. Well, I'll get to the next story is a little different from this one, actually, which illustrates the contradictory nature of the way in which this communication takes place. But the Chinese telecom giant hasn't yet received any expressions of interest from U.S. companies to buy the intellectual property underpinning its 5G technology. This story via the Wall Street Journal. So apparently there was a pitch to license the 5G tech so that it could be manufactured elsewhere. Maybe that would alleviate some of the skepticism around utilizing Huawei technologies. You know, most of the apprehensions centered on security, national security. Who gets to build the networks? Whose technology is in place here? Who built the hardware? More importantly, and is that hardware secure and reliable, or is there back doors?
Oh yeah,
nobody likes a back door.
Yep.
Well, they can be useful if you have one. I mean, in our building, we have to have a
back
door.
Fire code.
Yeah, it's fire.
All that stuff.
Yeah, code. Maybe that's all they were doing. Well, those were just emergency back doors in the hardware, in the tech hardware. We'll never use them. Just
have them there.
In case there's a fire. You see that?
Yeah.
Did we just land on something there? In case there's a global fire. You see what I'm doing? Conspiracy theory here. No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't know, obviously. Anyhow, he says now we can survive very well without the U.S. In fact, he says, why is everybody talking to us about the trade war? We were never doing business in the U.S., which is true. They weren't selling here. But, of course, that's kind of an oversimplification because they were buying from U.S. companies and then they were prohibited from doing so, or at least it became more complicated. So they do interact with the U.S., even if you can't buy Huawei devices in the U.S. But nonetheless, he says people are focusing too much on us because we're doing fine elsewhere in the world. In fact, they had projected a major fall off in business in the coming period post-trade situation, mostly around the inability to continue using Google software in the full-fledged way with the Play Store in markets where that's very important. Now, maybe we haven't seen the full extent of that yet as far as the negative impact is concerned.
I mean, it just started with the Mate 30 Pro.
It takes time, right? It takes time. There was stuff still on the shelf that could be compelling to people in Google-centric markets. But nonetheless, they kept booming. They kept booming, Will. In fact, some numbers were up for them. The company has said revenue for the first time in... the company has said revenue for the first 9 months of the year was up 24%. He initially forecast a $30 billion revenue hit from the blacklisting, but it's up as far as right now is concerned. Another interesting thing here, Huawei says, look, we're out here putting up 5G tech in the form of base stations at 5,000 per month in other markets. 5,000 base stations per month in other markets. And they continue to say the same thing. Look, you want to do it without us? So be it. But we ain't slowing down. And they're also saying you're going to fall behind if you're relying on other technology companies to deliver this stuff because they feel like they're so far ahead in this department. He's not completely shutting the door. They have found some ways around U.S. restrictions when it comes to getting the tech necessary that goes inside of their eventual products. They've done so by moving factories offshore, or at least utilizing the offshore factories that exist for some of these big manufacturers, including Intel and Qualcomm. It's a way around the U.S. restriction if the source is located geographically somewhere that doesn't fall within that restriction. And what can the U.S. really do to enforce it? Huawei's president of corporate strategy said in an interview that the purchase of U.S. technology is at 70 to 80% of its previous level. So they are trying to knock it back still, because, of course, you would be afraid that that lever or that knob or that button could be pushed again. And so now they're looking to diversify their suppliers. That said, Will, up until this point, it's still, there's some stuff you rely on U.S. suppliers for. Great examples being Intel and Qualcomm, the communication stuff and the chips and so forth. Software, too. We still haven't seen this alternative in a big way to Android that they're supposedly working on, maybe working on. Again, mixed messages there where they said, yeah, we could be ready to go with this in 5 minutes. Okay, they didn't say 5 minutes. Maybe they said 5 weeks. Maybe they said 5 months. But we don't have anything yet.
Yes.
That looks like a valid alternative, particularly for the markets, Western Europe, European markets. In a Chinese market, less important. As we've talked about in the past, people aren't as tied in to the Google services, the Play Store, things like YouTube, where we are right now.